Okay, we're moving on now from the challenges. We've heard about the big issues that need to be dealt with, and we've teased out that a lot of it is actually about the archaic sort of delivery side. And on one side, you've got fantastically dynamic med tech and pharma and other areas of technology development in healthcare, but then you've got this archaic delivery side. So we're beginning to get some themes going here. But now is the time when we start digging down a bit deeper into some of the detail. And but very pleased to have Marisa Miraldo here, who's associate professor in the business school, working in health economics. And Marisa is going to be chairing this panel with a range of people who will be introduced in a moment from a variety of different sides of the healthcare technology innovation sector. So, Marisa, over to you.
Thank you, James, very much. So, the objective so we have spoken about challenges in innovation. The objective of this panel is really to put those challenges into the context of pharma, medical devices, and biotech industry. So we have a very diverse panel. I'm really pleased to be chairing this discussion. And we are going to learn about the challenges they face, the mitigating strategies they're implementing to address those challenges, but also what are the key must-dos, in their opinion, that need to be in place so that we can ensure in the future a sustainable stream of innovation in key areas of need. So I'm very distinguished. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers. I would like to very briefly introduce them before we kick off with the discussion. So they change their, well, they are in different order. So
disruption.
So anyway, so the first disruptive innovation. Just to test my attention. So I'd first like to welcome Mark Hicken, that is Managing Director of UK Ireland at Janssen. Throughout his 19-year career with Janssen, Mark has shown consistent commitment to patients across a number of therapeutic areas, from HIV to oncology, where he has worked in a number of new business units. Mark is from the UK, yet has global experiences of the pharmaceutical industry, both at an operational and strategic level. Mark is the great believer that the pharmaceutical industry leader of today has to grow their business, develop talent, and fully engage with the external environment, be it patients, governments, clinicians, policymakers, HTA bodies, or regulators. We have our next speaker, that is Ted Garway Heath, and is an International Glaucoma Association Professor of Ophthalmology for Glaucoma and Allied Studies at University College of London, and the theme leader for Vision Assessment and Imaging at the National Institute for Health Research Biomedical Research Center that is based at the Moorfields High Hospital and UCL Institute of Ophthalmology. Ted has bestowed the prestigious Allan Research Institute Award for outstanding contributions to ophthalmic research, as well as the World Glaucoma Association Research Recognition Award, and he was also cited as one of the 100 most influential people in ophthalmology worldwide. Our next speaker is Kai Stoeber, and Kai is the Vice President of Global Innovation and Shionogi Europe. He received his MSc in Biological Sciences from the University of Bonn and a PhD from University of Cambridge. In his current role, he works with senior executives in Osaka, Japan, to define and deliver Shionogi's global innovation strategy, and his focus lies on broadening external networks towards integrated research collaborations across core therapeutic areas with key stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem. He identifies and evaluates horizon technologies and new targets or molecules from external sources, develops technology roadmaps, and engages in preclinical liaison for drug development programs. Our next speaker is Eva-Lotta Allan, that is Chief Business Officer at Immunocore since May 2013. She has over 25 years of business development experience from the biotechnology and life science industry in both the private and public companies, and is an elected member of the Bioindustry Association Board of the Directors. She also on the board of Targovax. In the past, Eva-Lotta worked at Ablings, where she served as Chief Business Officer from 2006, and prior to that, she has served as Senior Director of Business Development and Site Operations at Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and held senior positions also at Oxford Symmetry International and Oxford Glycosystems, and she's received a degree in microbiology from the University of Stockholm. And last but not least, Cyrille Petit, that is Chief Corporate Officer and President of Global Business Services at Smith & Nephew. And Cyrille's current responsibility as an Executive Officer are Corporate Development and Global Business Services. He has completed more than 30 investments in medical and healthcare technologies for Smith & Nephew since 2012. And prior to this, he spent 15 years at General Electric and held progressively senior roles in technology, healthcare, and capital. Cyrille has also worked at Goldman Sachs in the past. So thank you very much. You're very welcome. I will first then kick off with a question to Mark. And Mark, Janssen is well known for developing an open innovation approach, and also for engaging very closely with users and social enterprises. And my question to you is, do you see this model increasingly replacing the traditional closed approaches to innovation in the pharmaceutical industry?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I think we'll only know in the future whether that's been the case. I think certainly they're going to have to run in parallel. You know, what we believe, and we're not exclusive in that, is that innovation seldom takes place at the core of the business. So what's going to be right for tomorrow is not what we're focused on doing today normally. And innovations, the best innovations often come from closest to the customer or from closest to the problem. That, together with the sort of belief in you know, if you're going to deliver sustainable healthcare, you're going to have to engage and empower the patients and even people before they become patients. So how do you prevent and avoid disease? Those are the things that have kind of driven us in a direction of open innovation. We have J Labs, we have innovation centers in 4 destinations, 4 sites in the world. And it's a model that we've talked about already, so I won't labor the open innovation point. A couple of comments just on some of the challenges, and I can only give you a UK perspective on this. So partnering with the NHS, and there's a great benefit of having a single provider system, but it's also a bit of a challenge, and it's a very tightly managed system, and we see 2 behaviours that get in the way. One, which has been referenced this morning, is siloed budgeting. So if I spend money on something here and it delivers a benefit somewhere else, and it doesn't help me, why am I going to do that? And I think the first speaker talked a little bit about that. That's a real challenge for us in bringing new innovation through. Second is the near-term financial constraints. So can I spend money now that's going to save me money or deliver a benefit in 5 years? The answer is usually no, and particularly in the way that we're at the situation we're in now. Third thing I think is that there needs to be a relationship of trust between innovators and potentially customers or users of the innovation. That's been a bit of a challenge. Where we can help large cap companies like J&J, and Janssen is the pharmaceutical part of Johnson & Johnson, is that we have the resources to pump prime the system, so to champion innovation, to bring new things through. We've done 3 things that I would just specifically reference as sort of examples. One is that we were one of the first companies to introduce outcomes-based payment schemes for pharmaceuticals, so Velcade response scheme for myeloma products, trying to deal with, help the health system manage uncertainty in budget allocation, so underwriting risk. And we do that now in mental health as well. So how do you help avoid hospitalization? What happens if you don't? People that are living with schizophrenia, we underwrite the risk and guarantee the outcome. Second thing we've done is try to empower the patients, and we partnered with a social enterprise in the UK called Patients Know Best, who are who claim to be the world's first provider of patient-owned electronic health records. Set up by a physician who had the experience, suffers with a rare disease himself, and every time he interacted with the NHS, a different part of it, he had to explain what was wrong with him to the new person so that mistakes weren't made. We've tried to partner with that company, so we pumped prime, we invested in that business and gave them the benefit, the scale of our footprint, engaging with the NHS to try and introduce that business as a way of involving patients and their families in the care choices, decisions, and the care pathway. And then generally, just a bigger example is that, just the point about innovation taking place outside of the core of the business. At J&J, we established Janssen Healthcare Innovation about 6 years ago, gave it a budget and said, go and figure out solutions to some of these problems that we've talked about, away from the core of business, away from the P&L, the usual P&L, and go and experiment and try stuff. And there's been a whole bunch of experiments, which I won't talk about, but that's kind of how we've tried to address some of that. So hopefully that starts things off.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I was very interested about this risk sharing. That, of course, your company is one of the leaders on that. Do you think that this risk sharing burden that is excessively on the industry side, not only in terms of development and aftermarket launch, is it a sustainable way of incentivizing innovation for the future, or should we change that paradigm? And if we should, how could we do that?
I guess it is until the shareholders walk away, right? I mean, if we can't deliver commercial success, then people will stop buying life science stock and they'll go and buy Apple and General Motors and goodness knows what else. Then the capital dries up, then we've got a problem. So as long as we're not bridging for too long, and as long as there's true partnership, I think it has to be just a way to help move into new spaces. It's the pump priming that really helps, particularly when you're working with a system which is constrained in its ability to invest now for future years. So I think that is going to be a new way forward.
And do you think that risk-sharing model biases innovation towards certain areas and leaves and address certain key areas of need?
Yeah, I think inevitably areas of higher risk, whether it be larger sort of financial risk, we're pretty good at managing in pharmaceuticals the regulatory risk. The bigger challenge we face is the sort of reimbursement and the cost risk. And the systems, and the UK is a particular example of a system that hasn't kept pace. So rapid reimbursement of new medicines, we don't see the same, rapid approval of medicines, we don't see the rapid reimbursement. So we carry that financial risk for a long period. I don't think that's necessarily sustainable. And that's going to be a challenge for us.
So I'll profit from this discussion to move to Kai in terms of, I'd like to ask you about first what is Shionogi's perspective of new approaches to innovation, but more importantly, Shionogi is quite active in addressing key areas of need, and one of those is antimicrobial resistance. So can you share with us how you are developing new open partnerships and harnessing big data to tackle the AMR challenge?
Pleasure. I think it's been an excellent discussion so far, and as the day goes along, there's ample opportunity to pick up on some of the earlier points. So what struck me this morning was the major challenges that we are facing, as James very eloquently introduced us to. And I think the other day I came across a quote by an American philosopher called Eric Hoffer, who actually said that in changing times, and we really live in changing times, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will actually find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So I think it's a beautiful quote that sort of encapsulated open innovation, as Charles has very eloquently made the case for open innovation, to avoid duplication, poor resources, etc. So open innovation and open science is something that I'm very passionate and Shionogi is very passionate about, and we are a newcomer to the European scene, to the European innovation ecosystem. Now, Charles made a very strong case for open innovation, open science in the UK, painted a very positive picture, something that I would share. But I think still, when we look at public-private partnerships, they can be very transactional still. You know, it's I give a bit of this and I take a bit of this. And I think Mark, he's probably not here anymore, but he made at some point about cultural, operational, and regulatory barriers. And I think the culture is really, really important when you want to have open innovation. And when you really want to tackle these global challenges and you want to bring industry and you want to bring universities and you want to bring CROs and research councils together. So they have very different cultures. So the culture aspect is important. So Shionogi approaches this as wanting to build very long-lasting relationships with key universities and other stakeholders in this system. During the break, I just talked to Vera from Imperial College Business School, from Corporate Liaison, about the fact that we have invested now 1.5 years to build a relationship between Shionogi and Imperial, and this relationship is now really bearing fruit. So we believe in not transactional, but really relationship building. I think it's important to explore new modalities of engagement, and to create circumstances of serendipity. I think that's also extremely important by forming relationships and having close proximity. And to come to your question, Shionogi, one of our core therapeutic areas is infectious diseases, and we're very excited. I mean, earlier on we heard about how Big Pharma is moving away from neuroscience. Big Pharma is also believed to move away from antibiotic development. These are two areas where Shionogi these are our core therapeutic areas. And we are very keen in 2 years' time to introduce a next generation cephalosporin. That's a very important compound to us. And we are now wanting to understand how we deal in Europe, how we deal globally with infection control. We heard the challenge James introduced in antimicrobial resistance. And we are very keen that when we introduce our next generation cephalosporin, that we use it intelligently, smartly, that we give it to the right patient in the right dose at the right time. And here is an example of this new sort of mode of engagement in an open science way. So we teamed up with a technology developer in Germany in the area of knowledge management. We had discussions with Imperial College and with Alison Holmes and the Antimicrobial Resistance Initiative and with the NHS, and Shionogi participates in it. And what we're trying to do is to capture patient data, treatment data, pathogen data, and facility data from intensive care units, first in the UK and then across Europe. And we're trying to integrate this data into a knowledge network map. And what we're then trying to do is we're trying to take this data-driven approach to replace what we call therapeutic drug monitoring. So if a patient comes to an intensive care unit and can stay there for weeks, there is a period of 72 hours where essentially the antibiotic concentration is quite empirical, the antibiotic that's being given, how the antibiotic concentration is measured, and then over 72 days it's sort of determined at a therapeutic dose. And we're trying to replace this 72 empirical period by a data-driven approach where we give the right antibiotic at the right dose immediately to the patient. And that's an example where you have a technology developer, a pharmaceutical company, major university, and the NHS working together. These are early stage discussions, but we think we will overcome the barriers to this happening. Now, that's an open science approach. This knowledge network map we will publish and make available to everyone, to Public Health England, to other pharmaceutical companies. It will be truly available to everyone. But then I think it's important universities now challenged to have the third way to generate economic value, especially in the UK. So there's an important, that there can also be a commercial opportunity. So after we have generated this model, this knowledge network map, any company, including Shionogi, who wants to model their own data into this, will then interact and have a commercial relationship with the technology provider and the university. So that's how we have a truly open science project that has also got some commercial potential and is truly to the benefit of all. And I think that's an example of new modalities of engagement. I'll probably stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Just speaking on these collaborative models, I'll perhaps move to Ted. Ted, you have been an innovator yourself, and you represent the other side, or it should be the other collaborative side, that is the academia, but also clinical practice. Can you share a bit of your experience on the collaborative models and these perhaps different incentives that academia might have and the industry might have?
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the problems is this notion of it being the other side, and I'll sort of come back to that in a moment. But one of the issues that organisations like the hospital that I work in has is knowing what its IP portfolio is. What are the potentially commercial innovations that are being developed under the roof of the organisation? So I think, I mean, to give an example of that is if I turn the clock back 20 years, when I was doing my PhD, we had a new toy, which was an imaging device which had diagnostic potential in an eye condition called glaucoma, and I thought, well, okay, let's develop a diagnostic algorithm, which I did, published, and we just gave it to the manufacturer that built the device, which probably wouldn't happen now. It did mean that we've now got a very good relationship with that particular company, because I think we're good value for them. But there needs to be proper infrastructure in these organisations to, I think, proactively identify the IP that's being developed and develop teams to support very often it's the junior people who have these good ideas before the sort of 30 years of decline and bitterness that happens thereafter. So there need to be teams to support sort of speed dating, if you like, to match the innovator with all the different skill sets that are needed to help bring an idea through development into something that's actually a commercially viable product at the end of the day. And resources need to be given to that. So I've been in the situation before where we've had IP that we wanted to license to a company, and the company waited so long for the tech transfer to respond, they walked away. So maybe that's a question of it not being taken seriously enough by universities and hospitals. To go back to the question, though, of this sort of artificial divide between academia and business, I've got a project at the moment that's funded by the NIHR I4I program system. And we've got 2 patents that have been filed. There's a year left to go in the project, and my very valuable postdoc, who's the sort of core of the project, has said, well, you know, there's uncertainty, there's only a year left. I've had to start looking for other positions. He's got an offer from another university for a lectureship, but he said, I'm also asking industry. And of course, he's asking the company that we've been talking to for licensing the technology. My response to that was, well, great, actually, have that discussion with industry, and let's see if we can come up with a joint job plan that's part funded by industry and part funded by the university. So he put that to the company, and the company said, great, we very much like the idea of partnering with universities. So my job now is to take that forward with the university and see how receptive they will be, because they're always risk averse and there are sensitivities around IP and who owns it. But that's maybe something that is a challenge that we'll have to meet.
Does any of the industry would like to react to the risk aversion highlighted by, or the over cautiously highlighted by Ted?
Well,
and how that hinders these collaboration models?
I completely agree. We, Shionogi, with our innovation office, we gravitate to universities that are flexible, that want to explore areas of common interest from the bottom up, and that find that nucleus where there's academic curiosity and there's benefit to industry, and who then creatively look at how we can manage, how we can fund it, and how we can deal with the IP issue to, you know, so IP is such a hindrance at the early stages of collaboration. So really, and some universities are very straightforward, and it's easy to deal with. Others have actually, sadly, in my home country, I shouldn't really say that, but which you probably heard from the accent, is Germany. So there's walls and walls and layers of processes to go through before we can actually talk to an academic. And whilst there is excellent science and medical research in Germany, it simply is very laborious to go through these layers, and often it doesn't result in something productive. So there are other innovation-friendly countries and universities that have actually streamlined this process and made it less bureaucratic. So a very important point.
I'll just perhaps speak on another point that was raised by Kai, the importance of data in addressing these big challenges. I'll move to Eva-Lotta. Eva-Lotta, your company is at the cutting edge of personalized medicine, and you'd like to share, if you could share your ideas and your experience on what are the key steps that we need to have in place to move towards a cost-effective personalized medicine model, and what is the role of big data in that?
Yes, thank you. So I wouldn't say we're quite there yet. We're still very early stage, and we're aspiring to get to personalized medicine. And I think I'll refer to what the previous panel also discussed, in that, you know, it starts very early on when you're doing drug discovery. You need to first of all make sure that you have very good disease targets to try to lower the attrition and, you know, lower the risk the risk of failure. So for those who don't know, we're a private biotech that came out of Oxford University. Our founder and CSO worked on T cells back in the 90s when it wasn't fashionable, when nobody worked on T cell, and it took him to about 99 when he realized that actually to make something out of this innovation and make it an entity, a new molecular entity, he needed to leave the academia and actually set up a company. So we remain private. We initially were funded by two high net worth individuals who believe in this Danish individual who had the great ideas, and the story started there. So it's been a very long journey, and I think over the last 5 or 6 years we have dramatically improved how we're trying to lower the level of attrition by, for example, looking at disease targets, novel and existing disease targets, and look at in cancer to make sure that they're highly expressed in the cancer tumor, but at the same time looking at enormous amount of healthy tissue from different organs to ensure that those disease targets are not present there. So our technology cannot be tested in animals because it's a fully human entity. So we need to do a lot of testing preclinically before we go in to test in patients. And that's why it becomes even more important to collate data about different organs, but about different patients, RNA level data, enormous amount of different types of screening. And we're generating big data internally, but also accessing data externally from databases that we then harness and collate in order to use that and translate that to something meaningful for the patients. So we use, of course, diagnostics and biomarkers to then end up in a clinical setting where you're trying to ensure that you're not treating patients who will not respond to that new drug. And you see a lot of new drugs coming through in immuno-oncology, which is the area we're in, for example, checkpoint inhibitors, and they've had a great success. But already you see that a lot of patients are not responding. You know, they may express the disease target, but there are other factors that come into play. So we need to kind of travel the journey to kind of go towards understanding that better, and that will take some years to still to come. So from 1999, when the company was established, you know, we've made sure that we have a very robust platform. We started testing in patients, and we're now at the point that we're initiating what's called pivotal studies or registration studies that will take us to the product to market. And that is in a very rare eye disease. It's a melanoma of the eye called ocular or uveal melanoma. It's rare, so it's clearly we need to make sure that patients that we're going to treat have the target, the disease target that we're looking for. But we also have another restriction, and that is what's called an HLA restriction. So we need to make sure that these patients also have the correct HLA before we actually start treating them. And with that in mind, we're hoping then that we can actually increase the success in the clinical studies that will then lead to a successful drug that we can take to market.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. You mentioned always failure as a challenge, and Rifat today highlighted failure actually as an opportunity. And my question to you is, can we use models of open innovation or sharing experiences on failure to generate further and better innovation?
So I certainly think that, you know, over the next coming years, this will continue to improve. You know, we're not there yet as a company, and I would, you know, be lying if I said we were. We're far away from getting to the sort of ideal world of personalized medicine. But what we've done even in the last 4 years is to establish, we had an IT department, and then we had lots of scientists, but we had nobody that can communicate in between. So we've established what we call scientific computing group that actually communicates between these two, to take the innovation and translate it in this big data, to collate it and actually translate it into databases for us, which then eventually can be communicated back to IT to ensure that we have the right infrastructure. So I don't know, it's a difficult question to answer, but you know, there's still quite some way to go. But I think any issue should obviously, or any problem should obviously be a challenge to be overcome.
Thank you. Cyrille, so what is your perspective on the challenges of developing a new drug? Are you facing the same challenges, and are the enablers of innovation that we've just heard now across the different sectors common, shared also in the medical devices industry?
Yeah, sure. So Smith & Nephew is about a 5 billion business. We've been around for 140 years, so we're a rather mature company. We do 3 things. We do technologies to repair joints, ligaments, tendons. When they don't work anymore, we change them, change a knee, change a hip. And then we also do wound care products for the very bad wounds that you need to heal in the hospital context. The way we look at innovation is that the era of traditional innovation is not dead. We continue to invest 5% of our revenues in R&D. We invent products and we put them to market. That's going to continue for the foreseeable future. It needs to be complemented, though, by another approach where you think of innovation as going beyond just the products, but thinking of innovation as addressing a problem. And addressing a problem can be through science, for sure, but it can also be through a design, through a business model, or through combining a product with a service. Right? So let me give examples because I think it probably speaks more. So we've invented a great knee. It's made up of a material that's called oxinium. It's so strong it will last longer than other knees. And it's been designed with a ton of modeling, and it's very kinematic. When you put it in, it feels like it's your knee. Okay? Great product, right? We spent money and years developing it, brought it to market. And our clients, surgeons, they love it, right? Of course they love it. But hospitals hate the price of it. It's very difficult to get a premium price because the hospitals say, I've got a knee that lasts 10 years, so yeah, for sure, yours will last 30, but I'm not going to see the benefit of that for another, 10 years at least. So, we're struggling to get a good premium for that innovation. Well, we're still very happy we did it, we're selling it well and stuff. But that tells you that your innovation for a company like us that is at a mature stage is about, not only is it about tomorrow's technology, not the day after tomorrow, because we cannot invest for 30 years from now. We've got to invest in products that get results. Not only is it about that, but it's about value. It's about the value you bring to the system. Look, there is a finite amount of money in the healthcare system. If you come in with an expensive product, you're hoping to take the money from someone else's pocket. That's difficult. That's difficult, right? And if you come up with a very expensive product that people can't afford, you're like selling luxury goods in a refugee camp, right? Right? You don't want to be in that position. So the way to think about innovation is, how do I make sure that my innovation adds value? So let me give you another example. In our wound care business, we have a technology called negative pressure. What it consists in is when there is a wound, you put a dressing on the wound, you attach a pump to the dressing, the pump creates a vacuum, it accelerates the blood flow to the wound and accelerates the healing of the wound. Simple, it's been around for years, and we're one of the players in that market, actually one of two large players. Great product, except the patient is in a hospital bed with this tubing system and this pump by the bedside. Patient is in the hospital. You want to see what value looks like? I'll show you what value looks like. Value looks like that. It's a pump, except it's a small pump. It can be carried around. So what you do, it lasts 2 weeks, it's got a battery, it's got an indicator in case there is a leak. So what you do is, once the patient is in your hospital, you apply that product, get the patient back home, save a bed, create value. Also create quality of life for the patient, by the way. Pretty important. That's innovation that creates value. Creates value to the system, it creates value to the patient, creates value to the caregiver, easy to use. Needless to say, we're selling a lot of those, right? A lot more than pumps. They're single use, recyclable. Pretty good innovation in my view. I think that's the sort of thing that we're trying to get towards, and that's the kind of thing that really generates value for the system. So think of innovation as not only science, but resolving a problem, too many people in the hospital, too costly. And think of innovation as something that needs to bring value. Start from there, and then imagine your development plan to get to that.
That's very interesting that you touched on the barriers to adoption of and you somehow presented that if you have a good innovation that brings value, it's automatically, almost automatically going to be adopted in practice. Yet we know through research that we do here at the business school with some colleagues, for example, we're looking at laparoscopic surgery for colorectal cancer, and for the group of patients that will benefit from that treatment, that we know it's cost effective, we still see that despite this has been introduced in the late 90s, there's still a substantial amount of consultants that don't adopt that innovation. So is ensuring that there is value enough, or what else do we need to do in order to speed up that adoption of innovation within healthcare systems?
That's a tough question. I'll answer slightly besides the point, but hopefully you'll see where I'm going. If you start from a need, your adoption becomes somewhat easy. You've got, of course, address the problem, right? So here is another problem that we looked at addressing. In emerging markets, where we have about 15% of our revenues, we were among the first ones to be in emerging markets, and in our medtech industry, not many people have that much of the revenues in emerging markets. And there, we started with selling our high-end products to the affluent part of the population. Those that could afford it bought it, great, but not sufficient, because we were not addressing the need of the emerging population, the emerging middle class, that was looking for care but could not afford the top end. So the immediate response to that is drop your prices. Not very satisfactory. Let me tell you, our shareholders expect a return. They don't expect us to go and sell products at a loss or at a low margin in emerging markets in a risky area. So you've got to think of things differently. So when you think of something that can be adopted by that population, what they want is they want something that is good but that's affordable. So you got to, again, reverse engineer. Start from the problem, get to the solution. So the solution was, in our industry, we've got 75% of our revenues in cost, right? These costs are manufacturing the product, selling the product, and training your surgeons on using your products, right? Or the doctors or the nurses. These are our costs. So you think about it, say, what innovation is going to get me something that reduces those costs and therefore allows me to have a lower price point and still retain an acceptable margin that my shareholders will support. So we went back and we said we need simple design so that we have simplicity of use, simplicity of adoption, but it needs to be a good quality product because it's a Smith & Nephew product, right? We're putting our brand on it. So we reverse design technology that was not new science, it was stuff that already existed, but we redesigned it in a way that it was going to be simple to use, simple to sell, simple to adopt, and we're selling it at a price point that is, close to half of where we would sell our high-end. Let me tell you, for the person that used to be in a wheelchair and can now walk, that's innovation.
Yes, thanks.
I think it's a really good point because there's another innovation that we haven't talked about much today, and that is in education and training. So I think that the next generation of innovators will have a very different skill set. Universities have up to this point a sort of memorized knowledge model. But now, there's a new world. So we need to have people who can search for information, who can authenticate information, who can integrate and transfer information. And these are very different skill set, and they will be the innovators of tomorrow. And I think the role of universities is incredibly important in teaching these skills as well as entrepreneurial skills, so that we're filling the skills gap and we're having people who can seamlessly go between the different stakeholders in the innovation system. And that was a wonderful example of that transfer of innovation. Another one I heard recently by Sir Andrew Whitty, who said that one of the most exciting things that he saw in GSK in the last year or so was a graduate who actually took an Xbox Kinect system. If you're not familiar with this is a sort of camera that can capture movement, to actually apply to a manufacturing facility in GSK to have real-time monitoring of manufacturing inefficiencies. So that's another example of transferring something from a video game console to following in real-time inefficiency in a manufacturing facility. So I think this skill set is incredibly important, and engaging with the minds of these people, this new generation of innovators is important, and that's where universities have a fundamental role, I believe.
Thank you very much. We have been reminded we have 4 minutes, so I'll open the discussion to the audience. If you would like to make a question, yes, just introduce yourself and maybe direct a question to the panel. Thank you. To the person in the panel.
Thank you. Cyrille, it sounds like there's 2 kinds of innovation. I mean, you want, if you're going to create value that where everybody's incentives are in line, you're going to make a lot of pumps, but you're not going to make that many knees, because you have, an easier sell with the pumps than with the knees. So that you would, in some sense, shift away from creating certain kind of value to the patient. That's my one question. And the other one is about this introducing design solutions to bring, when you've got a better design, that product, that actually becomes your new high end. That's actually the one that you're going to then sell to the high end customers at a higher margin.
Yeah. So let me start with the second one. You're right, but again, you've got to think of the universe of as being a universe of a finite amount of money, or very low growth in the money available for healthcare. You've got to think about that, and probably a lot of unmet needs anyway with the money we already have today. So this whole concept that you can sell something very expensive, yeah, probably, but in terms of mass market, more difficult. I wanna just say on the second step of your reasoning, which is once you have the new high end, maybe your former high end becomes your low end. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Speccing down never works. If you put a scientist that's used to, or a research person that's used to develop super products, and you say, can you down feature it so that I can sell it for less in emerging markets, never works. Mm-hmm. You've got to invent it so that it can be sold in that emerging market, right? So it's that part. Now, to your point about you would want to sell a lot of pumps or a lot of it. Look, it's 2 different businesses. They're related. Obviously, you got the fact that when you do a surgery, you have an incision. On the incision, you put the wound care product. That's the logic of having that in the same portfolio for us. But it's 2 different business models, right? You address a wound. You address the diabetic foot ulcer. These are really bad things. By the way, I hope you never have to use our products, right? but if you do need them, we'll get you back on your feet. These are really bad wounds. The other one is it's a different pathology, right? So you need both, and we're in both of those businesses, but more importantly, we're in both of those care areas.
More questions? Guy in the back. And then there.
Hi, just a question perhaps most relevant to Kai, but when you think about harnessing innovation for sustainable global health, how do you harness innovation where there's a desperate need for sustainable global health? And I'm thinking of microbial resistance here, which is truly at epidemic proportions, and the statistics keep on getting worse year after year, as we all know. But the economic model remains broken. So the situation is getting worse, but companies like you are unable to innovate in the right way because, certainly in Europe anyway, the economic model is broken. And all these other wonderful innovations, frankly, mean nothing unless this issue is dealt with, because people are going into hospital to get a simple knee operation and are ending up in a bed for 4 weeks because they've gotten they're infected and penicillin drips, etc. So that's I think you get my drift, but I'm just curious how you would answer that and what the perspectives of Shionogi are on that.
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you. I think in 2 ways. So, firstly, antimicrobial resistance is a global challenge. It doesn't know any boundaries, any artificial country boundaries. So we are not simply wanting to come to Europe or globally to the world to take cefiderocol, which is our next cephalosporin antibiotic, and convince people, to sell it here. So we want to contribute to the community. So I mentioned the Big Data project, which is all about giving the right antibiotic at the right time at the right dose, so that we're actually really combating antimicrobial resistance. We're also engaging with some very early startup companies that use CRISPR-based phage-mit approaches to actually make a probiotic to essentially transfer CRISPR cassettes across bacteria through transposon transfer to actually remove antimicrobial resistance genes. That's a very early stage technology. It's a very early stage startup, but we are actually working with them to essentially develop a probiotic to remove antimicrobial resistance. So we're wanting to interact with the community, not just trying to sell our antibiotic. So that's one approach we take. In terms of reimbursement, you're absolutely right. I think we have to go and look at this globally. We have to go to the G7, G20. We have to have independent organizations that reimburse pharmaceutical companies that are willing to develop antibiotics, because the trials are hugely expensive. And quite frankly, if our antibiotic is used as a last choice, then we will never recuperate the costs that we had in development. So this has to be tackled globally. And I think Mark alluded to it. You'll probably find it in his book, that we need new reimbursement models that tackle it globally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have much more time, and I don't want to be between you and lunch. I'll just wrap up. I think what we've learned today here with the speakers is that, well, there's two key messages, is that value is very important, but it's even more important to ensure that the environment, and the environment meaning delivery models, design, education, financing, there's also innovation in that space to enable an effective diffusion of innovation. And I think you're going to touch in some of these issues this afternoon. So I'd like to invite you to thank to our speakers today, and to all of you.